Welcome back to the Athlete's Kitchen. So today we're going to make a roasted eggplant spread. Now before you have your judgments, I must say that try this before you prejudge it, because a lot of people who don't like eggplant, oftentimes it's a texture thing. I think eggplant actually has a really great taste, but sometimes it has a texture that not many people are fans of. But with this, what we're going to do is we're going to roast the eggplant with some other great tasting vegetables. Then we're going to puree it so it becomes a dip, so you're not going to actually notice the texture of the eggplant. So I just say suspend any judgment and give it a shot. What we're going to do is we're going to take our vegetables. We're going to take an eggplant. We're going to take 2 red bell peppers, and we're going to take a red onion. We're going to take some garlic, roast it on the sheet at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes, and then we'll puree it up. So eggplant, you just want to peel it. If you don't peel it, what you're going to find is that you actually could do it without peeling it. It's just going to kind of create a chewiness to it, whereas without the peel, it's going to have a much smoother taste. There's a little bit of peel in there, that's just fine. And it's always good, I think, to get a good peeler. I like this peeler. It's OXO is the brand, but there's a bunch of different peeling options out there. Now, knife skills, I think this is a good point to point out just some really basic, simple knife skills. When you hold a knife, you want to really hold it on the blade. Be aggressive with it a little bit. If we're real timid with a knife and we hold it far back, that's actually when we're more prone to cutting ourselves because we have less control over the knife. So really hold it at the blade and get a good handle on it. Then when you hold the vegetable, you want to do what's called the claw. And so you want to hold it so that way when you're chopping, the knife rubs up against your knuckles instead of potentially chopping off those precious little fingertips. So use the claw, hold the knife well. We're going to cut out the ends. Okay. And then I'm going to cut it into rounds. The eggplant may brown just slightly as it's exposed to the air, and that's okay. When we roast it, it'll brown up anyway. So I just take a couple rounds at a time, and we want to chop them into 1-inch pieces. I'm going to put those right into our bowl. Okay. Now, bell pepper. I used to cut a bell pepper the hard way, which is trying to cut out the core of it, and it just took a lot more time, and it was a little bit messy with the seeds. So here's an easier way to cut up a red bell pepper. You wash it first. We always wash all of our vegetables. Use the claw to hold it, and then you're just going to cut off the sides of it. And that way we've kept the seeds separate. Put that aside, and you have 4 pretty clean sides. So we're going to cut these into 1-inch pieces, just like our bell pepper, or just like our eggplant, I should say. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be roasting them, and then we're going to puree them. It doesn't really matter the aesthetics of them or how well. Oh, we'll add that anyway. So we're going to add these to our mixing bowl. Here's a red onion. Don't mind if I tear up a little bit. Often happens. I'm going to remove that outer layer just because it has a different texture. Will still create a little chewiness in our dip if we kept that outer layer on. So these just need to be in 1-inch chunks. Okay, so we have this gorgeous mixture of eggplant, red bell pepper, and red onion. And so we've lost a little red bell pepper, but it's okay. We're going to add this, and this is going to be 2 tablespoons. The recipe calls for 3. You can do 2 to 3. I found that actually 2 is actually adequate. Tablespoons of olive oil. And then we're going to add a little garlic. And you can use a garlic press, but because we're going to be pureeing, I want to chop that, because we're going to be pureeing the spread eventually, we don't need the garlic to be perfectly minced as with the garlic mincer. So even if it's just coarsely chopped, it'll be just fine. And if you really like things garlicky, you could add more garlic. And same thing with the opposite. If you don't like garlic as much, you could add less. So we're going to add some salt and pepper. It'll be about a teaspoon of each. take a spoon and just stir this up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just enough to make sure that the olive oil is distributed throughout the vegetables. Okay, we're gonna pour it onto our baking sheet. Shake it around a little bit, spread it out. We're gonna put it in the oven at 400 degrees, and this will roast for about 45 minutes, and then it'll be ready to puree. We're gonna take the eggplant, red bell pepper, garlic, and red onion out of the oven. And you'll see it looks a nice golden brown color. Some of the eggplant are even a little dark, and that's okay. We like it a nice roasted color. You don't want it burned, but roasted is good. So we're going to transport it into our food processor. It can get a little messy, but just sort of scraping it down. And I did want to mention, while it's roasting, you should take it out of the oven at least once or twice just to stir it up a little and to make sure it's not sticking to the pan too much. Okay, there it is. We're going to take 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, and that's going to actually give it a nice creamy tomato texture and taste. Now, however much you want to process it is up to you. If you like a really smooth dip, then I'd puree it all the way through. If you like a more coarse, thicker, sort of chunkier dip, then you just would want to pulse it a couple times. Give it a look. And so, as you can see, with that, you could serve it like that. And so that's going to be a coarser dip where you can actually get to see a little bit of what's in there. You can see the red bell pepper and you can see the red onion. People won't know it's eggplant if you don't want to tell them. However, I find that sometimes if I will be using it for a sandwich or using it as a spread for something else, I'll go ahead and puree it a little bit more. And you want to scrape down the sides. Now here's a little trick. I've served this several times, similar to the kale chips, where I've served it to people who may not normally want to eat an eggplant dip. Don't tell them. So I serve it out and I say, oh, it's a roasted red bell pepper dip, which it is, right? There's some red bell pepper in there. And people will taste it and they will love it, almost undoubtedly. And then it's after the fact that you tell them that there's eggplant in there. That's perfect. And so the only difference is that you can see the colors are a little bit more melded and it's just a little bit of a smoother dip. So whatever your preference is, you could use for either. And pour it into a bowl. And again, usually there'll be a little bit of leftover, and so then you can actually serve it with sandwiches or use it as a dip for crackers as a snack at work. You could put some into a little Tupperware and it'd be a nice heart-healthy snack. So all it is roasted vegetables, a little bit of olive oil, which is a heart-healthy oil, and a little bit of tomato paste. And there you have this lovely roasted eggplant spread. Took very little time to make and provides a great flavor and very multifunctional. So thanks for joining us in the Athlete's Kitchen.